Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You join me here in northern Colorado with a familiar 2017 Model S 100D. Now, what's so familiar about this car? Why am I making a video on an older Model S? Well, this is Alyssa's uncle's car, and there's a fun story to this where when he bought the vehicle, I said, hey, I'll fly out, make an out-of-spec motoring road trip. This was years ago. And, bring the car to you so you don't have to fly from Minneapolis to New Hampshire. And so I jumped in the car, rushed to catch a flight in New Hampshire, or maybe I flew out of Boston, I can't quite remember. And that's all documented on out-of-spec motoring. Well, now it's a few years later, about 100,000 more miles on the car, and I thought it'd be fun to see how it's holding up. Some of the upgrades that Chris has done to it over the way, tell you about some of the memories I had in this car when I first picked it up, and overall just see, has it even aged much from a degradation perspective, from a noise and rattle perspective. So let's take it for a drive. I'll take you on a tour, and it'll just be a little bit of a fun story to remember how great this generation Model S truly is. And here it is, the black on black 2017 Tesla Model S 100D. We helped Chris buy this car in Minneapolis at a Jeep Dodge Chrysler Ram store. And it was owned in Minnesota most of its life, up I think about 40,000 miles is roughly what he bought it with, if I remember correctly. Now it's at about 140,000 miles, and Chris has really been enjoying it. I want to say it's been 3 years, something like that, maybe a little bit. I actually don't know. Timelines all blur together when we're having this much fun making YouTube videos. But the car is looking, honestly, just as good as the day I saw it. It's a little dirty right now. Chris has drove it out here to Colorado from New Hampshire, and it's just looking, super mint, no major issues here. Am noticing a little something going on down here. I believe he had an aftermarket trailer hitch installed for a bike rack by Electrified Garage in New Hampshire. I believe that's what that is. Or maybe they're up in Maine. I forget exactly where their location is. I believe in New Hampshire. And, the tires are different. He's got the Michelin Cross Climate 2s on there, although he and I both agree that these are actually not that great for range. And he's noticing, some pretty poor range with these tires. I know a lot of you guys run these tires. Curious to see if you hear the same, or curious to hear if you see the same. And the thing's looking great. So we full charged it this morning. It's showing about 295 miles of rated range, down from its original 335 mile rated EPA range. But that is not a great way to measure degradation. I always say that. Never look at the full charge range of your car and say, that's how much range it's lost. Well, it's a rough estimate, but not good enough for YouTube. To do a full battery capacity test, what we really would need to do is supercharge this car all the way to 100%, jam every last electron in there, and then gently drive it to where it doesn't move anymore. And once it stops, we can look at how many kilowatt hours we can pull out of the car, and then compare that number to the day one number. And that's really the only way to measure degradation. However, it does seem like this car is suffering from, 10 to 15, somewhere around there, percent degradation in its 140,000 mile of driving. And to me, that seems normal. That seems reasonable. It's probably closer to that 10 to 13% number, which is right where our Model 3 is. Now, Chris does charge this car at home most of the time. I believe he has a NEMA 1450 outlet to power this vehicle. However, he does take it on a lot of trips. It's been out to Michigan multiple times. It's been, blasting between Rhode Island and New Hampshire. He drives this thing, uses it, has enhanced autopilot, and it's really a great looking car. Now, what's funny is I also owned a 2017 Tesla Model S. You guys know I own a 2022 Tesla Model S now. My 2017 Model S was very similar to this car. Black, although I had white seats at the time. And I just love this generation Tesla. To me, they're built really well. This is sort of peak Model S, in my opinion. You had a round steering wheel, you had stalks, you had the dual display. I love the vertical display here. I love the big display in my Model S now too, but to me, something was special about these cars. The real holy grail, in my opinion, is actually to find a refresh car with Autopilot 2, which you can upgrade to 2.5 and I think eventually onto 3, but with the Recaro next gen seats. So a slightly earlier car than this particular one. This is when Tesla switched to making their own seat internally. I believe this is a Tesla designed seat, but the Recaro seats are truly awesome. So highly recommend looking out for a Tesla with the next gen Recaro seats. If you're looking in this generation car, you sit nice and low, and they were just freaking awesome. So let's hop in. Let's take a look at what's going on in here. Cold morning, 24 degrees Fahrenheit, Model S 100D. Love this generation Tesla. These displays are customizable, so you can hold in the scroll wheel and choose what you want to see. Somehow that's just not something we can see on the new Model S. Let's turn down the fan a little bit here. And the new Model S, you don't get any of this customizable stuff. I love this gauge, this display. I want to know my kilowatt output and regen. It's like, this is when Tesla built cars for the enthusiasts, and I guess now they've gone a little bit mass market. But in terms of the wear and tear in here, it honestly looks as good as day one, to be totally transparent. Now he's got a bunch of stuff in the back here for his road trip, but man, the quality of this car is seemingly better than, this is right when they put Alcantara on the inside here. So he got a really good build date, I would say. A lot of the nice upgrades here. I don't believe this car has the premium interior pack. I'm not sure. Let's take a look here. We are at, 130,000 miles instead of 140, 131. So just a little bit more than our Model 3. And you can see here we have air suspension, premium audio system, FSD computer, but it is just enhanced autopilot. No CCS adapter support at the moment, but he is going to retrofit the car when that becomes available. Resistive cabin heater. This is way before a heat pump ever happened. Lead acid, and then the dual induction motor. So this is pre, what the heck, when they put the permanent magnet motor up front, what was that called? I can't remember. But basically it doesn't have one pedal driving. So you do have to hit the brakes every time you come to a stop. But he's on version 11.1 over here. Model S 100D, named it Tessa. I wonder how many Tessas there are in the audience. It's probably everyone's name for their car. Not creative, Chris. And yeah, let's go take it for a little cruise around. I'm really curious to see how this thing drives. It's got that great backup camera. One thing I do want to point out is Chris actually upgraded this screen. So the early Model S came with, excuse me, just knocking the seatbelt around. Wow, look at the seatbelt in this car. So old school. I forgot about that. The new ones are much nicer seatbelt. It's amazing all the little changes Tesla makes along the way. What was I going to say? MCU1 came with this car. It got the yellow around the screen. His chip was starting to fail, and you can send it off to Electrified Garage or other third-party service people to replace the failing sort of RAM chip, the little memory chip that burns out after a while. But Chris and I both talked about it for a little while, maybe a year or two ago, and he was saying, you know what? I am going to keep this car for at least the next few years. Maybe he'd go for a Cybertruck or a Rivian or something after this. But I said, you know what? Just spend the couple $1,000s, whatever it is, and get MCU2. And, his car was basically turning into a brick. The chip was failing, and there were cheaper ways to fix it, but we decided to go, I suggested to go for the full upgrade. So then I believe you can watch YouTube on this. You can do all the stuff. It's super snappy. And that, I think, was one of the best decisions, because that's something that, on paper might be a small increase in speed, responsiveness, and some features, but upgrading to MCU2 really makes this car feel modern and really nice. So I think that was a worthwhile upgrade. I don't believe he's upgraded the cameras on the car. Maybe not totally sure. But overall, man, it's feeling good. Now what's crazy is this 2017 Model S has less creaks and rattles than my 2022 Tesla Model S. I mean, just doing this in my Model S makes the whole thing flex and make weird noises. Here, I'm not hearing anything. It feels just as good as the day that I picked it up. Autopilot working great. I love that you have the adjustment here. So 2 is the closest following distance, which means I guess they got rid of radar on these cars. So this car does have radar and camera, but I believe Tesla is going camera only, which means you can no longer go to the closest following distance. Some things improve, some things don't improve. But I talked to Chris and he didn't seem like he was having too many phantom brake issues like I've been having in my Model S, so it seems pretty good. We are definitely near full charge for his road trip, and there's almost no regen. Wow, this thing feels freaking awesome. I'm going to take it just over to Starbucks and I'll let you know some thoughts and maybe tell you a little bit about the trip that I did with it. Do I recommend this generation Tesla with the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack? Certainly driving it is, I think, just from the round steering wheel, the seating position, the stocks, to me, and I'm saying this truthfully, this feels like a more premium driving experience than my new Model S. And, certainly costs a hell of a lot less money on the used market. So I think this might be kind of the sweet spot if you're looking for a Model S. This thing still looks as good as day one. Model S is a great looking car, built unbelievably well because no creaks, no rattles. Early Model S's are falling apart. The new Model S's are falling apart, at least in my experience and my dad's experience. And this generation Model S just seems to be holding on for so long. And just before we end this clip, and I'll tell you some final thoughts, our friends Marianne and Don from our Tesla Model X journey have a Tesla Model X from this generation, Ruby, and I filmed a video with her, 100,000 mile update. She's been on our channel. They have a YouTube channel. I'll link it below. And their car is very similar to this, built really well, lasting great, no major issues. The Falcon wings aren't having any problems on that car. And so to me, it's like, okay, this is when Tesla really stepped up their game. And now I feel like the focus has shifted away from Model S and it's on Model 3 and Model Y. And that leaves the Model S a little bit lacking in terms of quality, in my opinion. Let's go order some Starbucks. So I just did a quick trip to Starbucks. Of course, had to go get the strawberry acai. And wow, what a car. I'm sitting here thinking, I just went back to look at that video. At the time when Chris bought this Model S, it was the cheapest 100D in the country. I forget exactly what he paid for it. But to buy a used Tesla and for it to hold up this well and feel this good still, genuinely feels as good as the day I drove it. I haven't heard one squeak or one rattle. And the car's still full of stuff. I haven't even heard that squeak. Really impressive here. I'm really kind of actually blown away because, with Model 3 with 130,000 miles, my Model 3's lived a rough life, and I would say it's held up pretty well, but creaks and rattles and stuff like that. Here in this Model S, it honestly feels better, which I would have never expected from an older Model S. So it's really great to kind of revisit this generation car. Yeah, so the original road trip, I flew into Minnesota. It was below freezing, well below. It was below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I rushed this car across the country and ultimately had a great time. This car is very efficient at speed with the dual induction motors. It has the small rear induction motor because it's the efficiency 100D, not the P100D version. And yeah, couldn't be happier. So do I recommend this generation? Well, the new Model S is actually coming down in price pretty quickly on the used market. I mean, you can get a new refresh Model S. I think my dad's long range Model S is 2021, the one that he just traded into CarMax. If you follow the Out of Spec Dave channel, they just sold that car for 64 grand. And that's a refresh, dual motor, long range, new Model S with 250 kilowatt charging and all that good stuff. That's a pretty good deal. These are probably going to be in the high 30s, low 40s still, maybe a little bit cheaper, but keep your eye on the market. Is it worth that price differential? I would say if you're going to If you're going to go on a lot of road trips, then yes, I think the price differential is worth it if you do a lot of big distances, because not the efficiency, not the range of the car, but the charging speeds. That is the one limitation of the 100 kilowatt hour pack, is these cars do not charge that well. You might be able to see 200 kilowatts, 250 kilowatts, maybe for a small peak if the battery's fresh, but Tesla does some derated charging based off of aging, and it's not that bad. It's doable. Of course, Chris is out here road tripping and having a great time. But ultimately, my recommendation is if you're just cruising around town, you got to do the occasional trip, you just want to throw some miles on a car and, you know, have something nice to cruise around in, this generation Model S, you know, specifically the 2017, 2018 cars, maybe you can find a Raven, that was the word I was looking for earlier, with the permanent magnet front motor to do one pedal driving. That might be a sweet spot. Yeah, these cars still feel just as good as they did on day one. I wouldn't go for a super early Model S unless you're in for some adventure. But yeah, wow, what a machine. Glad it's held up so well. Fun to revisit a car that we filmed years ago and made some great memories with. Nice to see that it's treating Chris really well, and that, you know, it's always hard when you recommend friends or family to make a buying decision on a car, right? Because if anything goes wrong with it, you're to blame, to be totally honest. So I'm always like, just buy the car that makes you happy. And, you know, you can get my ideas on YouTube. But I sort of helped Chris find this particular one, and the price was right, and we don't think the dealer knew it was a 100D. It was kind of priced where a 90D would be, and it just worked out really well for him. And I'm glad that it's continuing to work out really well. Couple little issues, couple little bugs, couple fixes here or there, nothing abnormal. You know, we all know about the Model S MCU1 screens going. Look, I'm not saying these are perfect cars. They are a little bit of, you have to have a sense of adventure anytime you buy a used car, and it's very vehicle specific, but I think he's pleased, I'm pleased, this is great. The one thing that I totally forgot about an old Model S, there are no door pockets in these cars. So I was like, that's a nice thing about the new Model S interiors. They sort of redid the way everything is laid out, and it's nicer. But man, you just can't beat this steering wheel and these stalks. So much nicer. Thanks for watching just a quick little video of this car. I hope it helps you guys if you're looking at used Model S. Not to be super afraid, but to go in understanding you might need to you know, upgrade the infotainment system or little things like that as things age. But hope you enjoyed this video. See you in another one soon. Bye-bye.